So Pete Buttigieg went on Real Time with Bill Maher, and he was asked about Donald Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance. And it's an interesting clip for a number of reasons. Let's watch.
The other thing you get to do at a convention is roll out your vice presidential candidate, which in this case was J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
I know him a little bit.
What do you think of him?
Look, we're from the same generation. We're both from the Midwest, different parts of the Midwest.
Right.
I know a lot of guys like J.D. Vance. I've run into a lot of guys like him. Not so much when I was growing up in Indiana.
Thiel. Peter Thiel is his big backer.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, people don't know who that is. He started PayPal. Yeah. He's gay. He's a billionaire. I mean, I've had a couple of people who knew you were coming on this week said, ask Pete what he thinks about Peter Thiel being so in love with J.D. Vance, who is flatly against gay marriage.
So I think it's a profound contradiction, but maybe it's not that complicated. I know there are a lot of folks who say, what's going on with some of these Silicon Valley folks veering into Trump world with J.D. Vance and backing Trump? What are they thinking? Silicon Valley is supposed to be, they're supposed to care about climate. They're supposed to be, pro-science and rational and libertarian. So normally libertarians don't like authoritarians. What's up with that? I think it's actually, we've made it way too complicated. It's super simple. These are very rich men who have decided to back the Republican Party that tends to do good things for very rich men.
We got verification this week that the reason Trump picked J.D. Vance is because he felt like, okay, Biden's staying in. We got this thing on lock. I'm going to go with a choice that's a little more risky. That won't necessarily help me with the election. I'm going to go with what Don and Eric basically twisted my arm to do. I'm going to go with J.D. Vance. And the other thing is he's, of course, a massive MAGA loyalist, said he would have followed through on January 6th, unlike Mike Pence. Trump loves that. So that's why he went with him. But now that it's not going to be Biden, panic. Because they know, hey, this guy doesn't really help you. He doesn't help you. You already have Ohio on lock. He's a senator from Ohio. He barely won in what was supposed to be a red wave year. He's not very politically talented. Now they're panicking. Because they picked J.D. Vance. And the other thing is, that guy's got a million things to comb through. Guys, you go watch the segment where I broke down his record, his political positions. There's this mythology that he's some sort of populist. He's not remotely populist. Not even close. And also, he's incredibly socially conservative. He wants to ban no-fault divorce, wants to ban IVF. He compared abortion to slavery. Like, this is a field day for the Democrats. And here's Pete Buttigieg, a guy who I'm no fan of, is out there saying, look, this is not that complicated. The reason why a billionaire like Peter Thiel supports J.D. Vance is because he wants his tax cuts. And J.D. Vance is going to give him his tax cuts.
That's kind of what you're getting with J.D., right? So I knew a lot of people like him when I got to Harvard. I found a lot of people like him who would say whatever they needed to get ahead.
Pete, that's you as well. I'm on to you, fella. I'm on to you. That's you too. Who you fooling?
5 years ago, that seemed like being the anti-Trump Republican, so that's what he was. Talked about how he was unfit, how he was cynical, called him an opioid, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a person, but definitely a really... But I mean, for somebody whose identity is that they're connected to Appalachia, which has an opioid crisis, that really is the darkest thing you could possibly say about Donald Trump, at least in public. But behind the scenes, apparently, he's actually calling him Hitler, right? Seriously. 5 years later, the way he gets ahead is that he's the greatest guy since sliced bread. And I actually watched this exact same process with somebody else I got to know in my days in the Midwest, which was my former governor, Mike Pence, who I watched start out as an evangelical Christian who cared about rectitude and family values, and then get on board with a guy who was mixed up with a porn star, make excuses for him, so that he could have power. And then he did. He got 4 glorious years, I guess, as vice president of the United States. And it ended on the west front of the Capitol with Trump supporters proposing that he be hanged for using the one shred of integrity he still had to stand up to an attempt to overthrow the government. Right. So I guess, maybe not as a politician, but as a human being, what I'll say is that I hope things work out a little bit better for J.D. Vance than they did for Mike Pence.
That's actually kind of funny. Isn't it crazy? Like, Biden has set the bar so low that when you hear a Democrat like Pete Buttigieg talk, who, again, I'm no fan of, when you hear him talk, you're like, he's making cogent arguments. Like, what? That was a really interesting and rational point. That was quite a shot you just took at J.D. Vance. That was an incredible thing you said about Mike Pence. Like, you're listening to a Democrat talk in full sentences and, like, make good arguments and go after the right. And it's like, oh, this is amazing. Because we're used to Biden being on stage and, like, forgetting where he is and stumbling and bumbling and cutting off his own sentence by saying anyway because he forgot where he was going, and calling Kamala Harris Vice President Trump and calling Zelensky President Putin. And So anyway, by the way, at the time that Pete Buttigieg did this segment, Biden was still the nominee, and he did like a whole little pro-Biden thing with Maher. So it honestly looks like Joe Biden sort of blindsided everybody with his decision. The reporting was that like he made the decision, and within a minute, like it was done. Like he didn't tell anybody. He called Kamala like an instant before he did it and did it right. So blindsided everybody, but thank God Biden stepped aside. That's all I have to say. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.